The U.S. is using it as a false flag. Did the Israelis shoot at this Apache? Was it a malfunction? Where are they? Say that 2 pilots were rescued. How do we know this? Is there any confirmation of this? Any footage of it? No, nothing. There's nothing from the United States. There's only statements and claims. The fundamental point is Iran has pulled a blinder. Okay, this is equal to the blinder they pulled by hitting the Gulf Arab states initially when the 3 months ago when the hostilities began, because that pulled the region into the conflict. 17 bases rendered inoperable or not in use, not able to stage any military operations from. Oh, all of our covert bases there. Oh, we didn't know about those, did we? But Iran knows about them, and the Israeli bases. So from a U.S. military point of view, post-Vietnam, this is the worst defeat strategically for America in the last 50 years.
Now the U.S. F-35 hangars in Jordan are shown by satellite imagery to have been hit, and it looks like hit very hard.
Helicopter down in the Strait. Trump blamed Iran. U.S. launched strikes. Iran fired back. Hit F-35 hangars in Jordan. Satellite confirmed it. So before we go any further, does anyone actually know what brought that helicopter down?
There's a number of other things that could shoot down an Apache helicopter, and maybe not a Shahed drone, but so it's not at the moment not very credible. There's no confirmation. So that means if the U.S. reaction was completely disproportionate, then that's a false flag. The U.S. is using it as a false flag. Did the Israelis shoot at this Apache? Was it a malfunction? Where are they? Say that 2 pilots were rescued. How do we know this? Is there any confirmation of this? Any footage of it? No, nothing. There's nothing from the United States. There's only statements and claims. Nothing.
And then he lays out why. Regardless of how the helicopter came down, what Iran has been doing strategically this week is something no one on mainstream media is explaining properly.
A mid-tier power could never draw a red line on a moral basis. They can't. Only a superpower can. So Iran is attempting a bold move. This isn't out of character for them in terms of their statements, their constitution, what the value set of the Islamic Republic. They've always championed the Palestinian cause. Okay. But now it's in practice. And that is, to me, extraordinary.
Let's go through with it, starting with the helicopter. Welcome back to ARM Geopolitics. I'm Aaron Johnson. On this channel, we don't just cover the news. We cut through the noise, dominate the narrative, and give you the analysis mainstream media is too scared to run. Vigilance is our shield. Truth is our weapon. Let's get into it. Let's start with the helicopter, because if America just launched a fresh wave of strikes on Iran, the least we should know is what actually triggered it. And the answer is messier than the official version.
Firstly, I think I don't believe, or I'm not clear or confident about the provenance of a claim that Iran shot down this U.S. Black Hawk helicopter or Apache helicopter. I'm not convinced. I don't have any clear confirmation for the Iranians, and normally they're quite forthcoming with things that they shoot down in their trophy case of U.S. aircraft, which is just getting bigger by the day. So the question is, was it a crash? We've heard the Iranian foreign minister say this is a crash. These things happen. But the claim by CNN initially was that this Apache helicopter was brought down by a Iranian Shahed drone. Shahed drones don't travel very fast. I doubt that they could even keep up with an Apache helicopter. So that's kind of strange. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There's a number of other things that could shoot down an Apache helicopter, and maybe not a Shahed drone. But so it's not at the moment not very credible. There's no confirmation. So that means if the U.S. reaction which was completely disproportionate, then that's a false flag. The U.S. is using it as a false flag. Did the Israelis shoot at this Apache? Was it a malfunction? Where are they? Say that 2 pilots were rescued. How do we know this? Is there any confirmation of this? Any footage of it? No, nothing. There's nothing from the United States. There's only statements and claims. Nothing.
Before we get into what this all means, we need to take a look at the massive gap between what Trump posted online and what our actual military officials are saying behind the scenes. Trump hopped onto social media and claimed that Iran deliberately shot down a highly sophisticated US Apache helicopter over the Middle East. It sounded like a clear-cut act of war. But when top US officials talked to reporters, they painted a completely different picture. They admitted that while an Iranian drone did hit the helicopter, they have absolutely no idea if it was an intentional attack or just a freak accident where the 2 aircraft crashed into each other. Meanwhile, Iran basically shrugged it off, saying that if American forces fly that close to their territory, accidents and crossfire are bound to happen, so they should just leave. Thankfully, both American pilots were rescued safely by a high-tech robotic boat, making military history. But here is the real problem. If our own military admits they don't know if this was a deliberate attack or an accident, why did we immediately launch a new round of retaliatory bombings? Did the 2 aircraft just bump into each other in crowded airspace? No one has the answers. All we know is that Washington started dropping bombs first and asking questions later, and the American public deserves the full truth before this escalates any further. Now, the strategic analysis, because Henningsen lays out something here about what Iran has actually accomplished over the last 2 weeks that I think most analysts are underselling.
In other words, what Iran did this week was massive. They basically, during a lull in hostilities that's been like pretty much for a month, over a month, they then drew a red line regarding Lebanon and Israel, and then Israel stepped over that red line and Iran attacked. So that means at that point, Iran now controls the pace of action and reaction. That's where you want to be in any conflict. And they're very patient. They bided their time and they seize that opportunity. And that means that everyone else has to conform to their pace because and that includes the diplomatic side as well as the military side. So it's a massive advantage for Iran. So I would read this false flag personally as a way of the U.S. very deceptively and underhandedly, as expected, because you're dealing with America here, is trying to regain control of the pace of action, or what some people might call escalation dominance or the escalation ladder and so forth. So, because who knows what this would lead with Iran? I mean, they're able to basically pull Lebanon into the package negotiations and enforce it. So that means the next step is pretty clear. They can pull Gaza into the negotiations package. And I feel like Iran has said that they want to do that. They are doing that. Yeah, this is the game changer. So that means you're in a totally different situation now in the region. But the point I'm making is the fundamental point is Iran has pulled a blinder. Okay, this is equal to the blinder they pulled by hitting the Gulf Arab states initially when 3 months ago when the hostilities began, because that pulled the region into the conflict. It made them co-belligerents. It created all kinds of pressure and friction politically between the Gulf allies and the U.S. and Israel, and also globalized the conflict when energy was throttled, and then the closure of the Strait of Hormuz was the sort of final act in that move. So that allowed Iran to punch way above its weight geopolitically. This latest exchange, or the drawing of the red line with Lebanon, allows Iran to punch above its weight in the region, but not really punching above its weight. I mean, it kind of establishes them as a bona fide superpower in the region. So higher than a mid-tier power and just on the cusp of being a global superpower. If you consider the resource and the economic ramifications of the Persian Gulf as it is in the global economy. So that's a major thing. And the other thing is the U.S. and Israel have tried so hard to compartmentalize all these different conflicts. Like Gaza is separate from Lebanon and separate from Iran and Yemen. They're dealing with them separate. They want to do that. They need to do that. And Iran's saying, no, this isn't how it's going. We're now putting the source of the hostilities against us and the Lebanon and the Palestinians is from the same source. It's Israel. So you're part of the negotiations now. You're part of any ceasefire agreement. It's going to be all encompassing. And so, the important thing here, Danny, is this. A mid-tier power could never draw a red line on a moral basis. They can't. Only a superpower can. So Iran is attempting a bold move. This isn't out of character for them in terms of their statements, their constitution, what the value set of the Islamic Republic. They've always championed the Palestinian cause. Okay, but now it's in practice, and that is to me extraordinary. So we'll see if they're able to maintain this upper hand, as it were, militarily and diplomatic. When I say diplomatically, I'm not talking about real diplomacy here. And in that sense, the statements from the Iranian foreign minister and Ghalibaf about now they are pursuing their military aims concurrently with their political aims. So they're taking they've clicked into Clausewitzian mode, basically, that the military activity is an extension of politics by their means. So again, this is only a powerful geopolitical actor could take these positions. Only a normative power in the international system. So they're really distinguishing themselves from a lot of other countries, either stooges and lapdogs of the U.S. or rogue states that act outside of the international system and norms, like the U.S. and Israel. So, Iran's firmly in that China-Russia camp now, geopolitically, and hence they will be recognized by other powers.
Henningsen is making an argument here that I think is actually important. It's not about taking sides, it's about strategy. The compartmentalization point. For 3 months, the US and Israel have tried to keep every conflict in its own box. Gaza is one thing, Lebanon is another, Iran is separate, Yemen is different. This matters because compartmentalization lets you deal with each problem individually and make individual compromises without threatening the whole structure. Iran is systematically destroying that strategy. First, they hit Gulf Arab states. Those states became co-belligerents. They got pulled in. Then they closed the strait. Now the whole global economy is in conflict. Now they drew the Lebanon red line and enforced it. Next, Gaza gets pulled into the negotiations package. If you're Iran, you've just converted 5 separate problems for America into one unified negotiation where Iran holds multiple pieces. The Clausewitz reference is worth a quick explanation. Clausewitz was a 19th century Prussian military strategist who wrote that war is politics continued by other means. The point is, military force isn't separate from the political objective, it's the instrument of it. When Henningsen says Iran has clicked into Clausewitzian mode, he means Iran is using each military action specifically to achieve a political outcome. Hit the Gulf states, pull them into the conflict. Draw the Lebanon red line, force it into negotiations. Shoot down a drone that got too close, trigger a US response that exposes US capabilities. And his superpower point ties directly to America first. A mid-tier power that fights defensively is just managing losses. A country that draws a red line, morally, politically, militarily, and enforces them is operating at a different level. Whether you like Iran or not, what Henningsen is describing is a country that has been playing this conflict at a strategic level, while the US has been playing it at a tactical one. That gap tends to determine outcomes. Now, the block that every American taxpayer should see, because Henningsen goes through the military numbers here and The comparison he makes to previous wars is genuinely staggering.
The U.S. has sustained almost $4 billion in losses in aircraft alone since this war began. This is just a massive number, and I think Iran can certainly hit stationed F-35. So it only gets worse from here. Iran is saying they will hit energy infrastructure if the U.S. goes for its oil and gas infrastructure. So your thoughts, though, on that comment by Nathan Sales before we get to the Trump preparations for a further war?
If that's who's in the ear of the White House, and the Atlantic Council do play a big role in war hawkery in Washington. I mean, that's where they kept Mike Pompeo fed and watered while he was going around Fox canvassing for a vice presidential role in 2024, and it just fell flat. But it's a place where people like that, war hawks, Israeli operatives, can get paid and sort of keep their career moving along while they wait for, Trump to come into office or whatever. When he said, which is just, this shows you that these people are delusional. And if they're delusional and they're advising the White House, then you really need to entertain the possibility that the White House is delusional as well from a military point of view. And he said that this ceasefire has allowed Iran to rebuild its military or its armed forces. Can you rebuild a military in 4 weeks? I mean, what planet is this person on? They're supposed to be an expert, but this is what passes for punditry in the United States. They get paid a lot of money, by the way, for this great, bold advice that they're dealing out here on national TV. No, Iran's military wasn't wiped out to begin with. That's the sort of, intelligent, basic common sense assessment. But that goes against the propaganda line of the White House. We've wiped out their military. We've wiped out their navy, wiped out their plane. Frankly, they don't have any missiles left, and there's no leaders either. The country is a mess. It's falling apart. So Trump has had this tired old shtick. He's been pushing. He's still pushing it yesterday. Said the exact same thing. I mean, this lethargy of the president with his sort of Dean Martin celebrity roast style takes on the war is just beyond a joke at this point. The reality is this: the U.S. has depleted its military. The U.S. has depleted its armaments, its ammunition, its missile defense, and so has Israel. The U.S. has had to steal its own stocks from the Pacific Front and move it over and rob Ukraine to sort of bolster Israel and itself, and move it from other theaters because it's going to take the U.S. years to restock. That's the reality. The reality is the U.S. have lost more fixed-wing aircraft. If you add up all of the lost fixed-wing aircraft, we're talking about planes and drones and so forth. You add that up, and AWACS planes, add that up with Iran and also with Yemen, because you have to consider this is all part of the same conflict. By my count, upwards of 80 fixed wing aircraft. And by the end of the week, Danny, it might be 90. Who knows? With the amount of MQ Reaper drones that are falling from the sky as we speak. Those aren't cheap, by the way. They're more. The price of them. They might be the same price as 2 Airbuses. That's what those aircraft cost. So that's in the post-Vietnam era. That's the most. To give you an example of how devastating that is, in the first Gulf War in 1991 and the Iraq War in 2003, and 10 years of that fighting, the U.S. lost 75 fixed-wing aircraft. 75 during that entire 12-year stretch in the 2 different wars with Iraq, and not as advanced aircraft, by the way. So this is a disaster. Oh, and by the way, 17 bases rendered inoperable or not in use, not able to stage any military operations from. 17 bases and facilities in the region, including Iraqi Kurdistan, by the way, which is getting pounded by the Iranians.
Just look at the staggering cost of this conflict. Because even if the government is hiding the official numbers, independent trackers are painting a terrifying picture. Analysts estimate we've already lost over 80 aircraft and suffered $4 billion in damages. To put that into perspective, we have already lost more warplanes in the last 3 months than we did during the entire decade of the Iraq and Gulf Wars combined. The math behind this war simply doesn't add up for America. Just look at the equipment. The cost. A single Reaper drone costs $32 million, and several have already been shot down. The supply crisis. We're firing weapons way faster than we can build them. For example, America only manufactures about 600 Tomahawk missiles a year. Our military burned through 500 of them in just the first 2 weeks of this war. This has left our ammunition stockpiles at historic lows, forcing the military to pull weapons away from Asia and the Pacific just to keep up. It will take years of factory production just to replace what we've already used. On top of that, our global footprint is shrinking. Reports confirm that at least 20 US military bases across 8 countries have been struck or damaged. Many of these forward outposts, which took decades of diplomacy and billions of dollars to build, are now completely useless because they aren't safe from Iranian missiles. When you add up the lost planes, the empty weapons, warehouses, the destroyed bases, you have to ask, what did the American people actually get for all this sacrifice? That is the one question politicians in Washington are terrified to answer. And now the most concrete thing in this episode, because Danny shows satellite imagery on air that confirms something CENTCOM won't say directly.
Now the US F-35 hangars in Jordan are shown by satellite imagery to have been hit, and it looks like hit very hard. Satellite images is not always the easiest thing to look at, but that looks like a big crater where the hangars were. So I don't know how many F-35s were in that thing, but or stationed in that thing, but it doesn't look good. And then Ramat David Air Base, it's been confirmed by satellite imagery, Israel's Ramat David Air Base, that it was also hit very hard. This one's a little harder to see, but this is being confirmed by screen grab from Copernicus Sentinel-2 satellite imagery. So that's not a good idea. Oops, sorry, not a good idea, Patrick. You said, well, is it a good idea to keep going?
The Kingdom of Jordan, an Israeli air defense battery with a country attached to it. That's what Jordan effectively is. Literally. It's a missile defense base for Israel that happens to have a country and people living there.
Al Azraq Air Base, Jordan. That's where US F-35s, F-15s, and F-16s are stationed, along with a US Army Command and Control Center. Iran's IRGC said they fired 12 long-range solid-fuel ballistic missiles at Al Azraq, targeting the F-35 hangars and the US Command Center. They separately claimed to have struck 21 US military targets across the region in total, including the 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, which was also hit, and an MQ-9 Reaper drone shot down over southern Iran. TRT World confirmed. The IRGC says 12 ballistic missiles targeted Al Azraq Air Base, which hosts US fighter aircraft, in retaliation for American strikes on sites near Tehran. The claims have not been independently verified. Then, satellite imagery showed up. Now that line, not independently verified, that's the standard caveat. But then Danny shows the Copernicus Sentinel-2 satellite images on air, a big crater where the F-35 hangars were. The satellite doesn't lie. Here's what makes the Jordan angle significant. US F-35s, the most advanced and most expensive fighter aircraft in American history, at around $80 to $100 million each, depending on the variant. They are stationed at Al Azraq. If Iran's ballistic missiles reach that base and damage or destroy the F-35 hangars, there are 2 implications. 1, Iran has now confirmed precision strike capability into Jordanian territory. A country that has no border with Iran, is nominally neutral, and was supposed to be outside the immediate conflict zone. And 2, those F-35s either escaped, were destroyed in the hangars, or are damaged. The US has not confirmed the status of the F-35s at Al Azraq. And Henningsen's Jordan line, an Israeli air defense battery with a country attached, that's his characterization of why Jordan is a target. Jordan has historically hosted US assets and participated in missile defense operations in support of Israel. If Iran is targeting Jordan because it sees it as part of the anti-Iran military infrastructure, that expands the geography of this conflict significantly. And now the story within the story. One that Henningsen flags and I think deserves a little bit more attention than it's getting. Because what Trump posted on Truth Social during these strikes is a remarkable piece of market timing.
And you said Trump every other day is posting. He did it again today, posting to manipulate the markets, manipulate the oil markets, the S&P 500, Wall Street. Look at this. This is what he said today, literally right after he said he's going to attack Iran. It's such a shocker. Nobody should be shocked by this, but it is truly almost parody at this point. He comes out with this announcement that the United States Navy, the military, has executed a secret mission to support oil tankers and other commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz, and announced that this effort has resulted in more than 100 million barrels of oil making its way through the strait. More than 200 commercial ships have safely traveled through the strait. It's a wildly successful effort because the USA controls the Strait of Hormuz, not Iran. Their military is defeated. Their economy is lost. It's over for Iran. Thanks for your attention to this matter. It's almost coincidental, I guess, right, Patrick, that somehow this wildly successful operation, which has absolutely no verifiable, secret, but now public, has totally just flooded the market with oil, just as he announces he's about to bomb Iran.
That's pretty convenient. Let's just take a look at all the call options and put options right across the board in Wall Street, and it's a joke. It's ridiculous. You control the Strait of Hormuz. Great. So let's call it a day. How about that? No, but you don't. That's the problem.
We need to separate the facts from the politics when it comes to the massive oil update we just received from the White House. First, let's look at the actual math. The government claimed that 200 massive cargo ships successfully carried 100 million barrels of oil through the Middle East's most dangerous waterway this week. But experts are calling foul. They point out that every single oil tanker on Earth is publicly trackable online for free. If these 200 ships actually made the journey, the media could easily list their names and ID numbers. So far, despite all the big headlines, not a single news outlet has named a single ship. Second, look at the incredibly suspicious timing of this announcement. On the exact same day that Trump announced new military airstrikes on Iran, news that would normally cause global oil prices to instantly skyrocket, he also posted that 100 million barrels of oil had safely cleared the area. Think about how the stock market works. News of a major war makes gas and oil prices go up. News of a massive oil delivery makes the prices go down. By dropping both announcements at the same exact time, the administration effectively canceled out a massive gas price spike at the pump. Critics are calling this flat-out market manipulation. Well, that is a heavy accusation. One thing is for certain. Everyday American consumers and investors deserve the honest truth. If those ships really delivered the oil, show us the receipts. If they didn't, then Americans are watching their gas prices and retirement portfolios move based on a complete fairy tale. With that said, let's skip the cable news spin and look at the 5 hard-hitting truths from today's military briefing. First, the helicopter incident is a total blur. Yes, the 2 American pilots are safe, which is great news, but the military confessed that they have no idea if the Iranian drone hit them on purpose or by accident. Despite not knowing the truth, Washington immediately started dropping bombs. Everyday Americans deserve real evidence, not just a trust us before we get dragged into a larger war. Second, Iran is outmaneuvering the West. Love them or hate them, they aren't backed into a corner. Over the last 100 days, Iran has successfully tied all the separate conflicts in the Middle East, shipping lanes, Lebanon, Gaza, and Yemen, into one giant package. They are playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. Third, our military is burning through gear. We have reportedly lost more warplanes in the last 3 months than we did in over a decade of the Iraq and Gulf wars combined. Replacing these high-tech jets and missiles takes billions of dollars and decades of factory time. So we have to ask, what did we actually achieve for that massive price tag? Fourth, our most prized jets are in danger. Space satellites caught... Let's do that again. Fourth, our most prized jets are in danger. Satellites caught images of giant bomb craters right where America keeps its ultra-expensive $100 million F-35 stealth fighters in Jordan. The government is staying silent, but if our best jets were blown up on the ground, that supposedly safe, neutral country, the war just took a massive turn for the wars. Finally, the oil story doesn't hold water. The White House claims millions of barrels of oil are moving safely through the conflict zone, but not a single news station has been able to name a single cargo ship doing the moving, even though ship tracking data is free for anyone to look up. The old script isn't working anymore. Next week, reality is going to catch up with the headlines. I want to throw a tough question to the comment section below. And there's no easy right or wrong answer here. Think about the American helicopter that just went down. Our own military officials admitted they don't know if the Iranian drone hit it on purpose or if it was just a total accident in crowded airspace. So here is the debate for today. If it was an accident, should the US still have launched the retaliatory airstrikes? Or does the fact that our troops were hit near their territory mean we had to punch back immediately, regardless of what they intended? I want your honest, unfiltered take on this. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'll head down there to read them. And look, if you believe we should be asking these tough questions before the bombs start dropping rather than after it's too late, do me a huge favor. Hit that share button, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It's the only way to get this message past the algorithm. Let's see what you guys got to say in the comments. This is ARM Geopolitics. I'm Aaron Johnson. Stay sharp, stay informed, and never stop questioning. I'll see you in the next one.